What's up? Hope everyone's having a good day and is ready for another video in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Today we got one of my favorite throwers ever, Robert Harting. If you don't know who he is, then I guess you're just living under a rock. But I've been seeing that a lot of younger people don't actually know who he is. And if you don't, you should. Because from around 2009 to 2014, he basically was the face of discus throwing. Alright, he was undisputedly the best thrower in the world through basically a decade. Beating some of the toughest comp ever, and Gerd Kanter, Alekna, and Peter Malachowski, and Ishan Adati, just a whole plethora of 69 plus meter dudes and 70 meter plus dudes, and his PR is like 70-66 or something. I think he's like the third furthest non-reverser ever. He's from Germany. He's 6'9", like 280 or something. He's a 3-time world champ, 1-time Olympic champion, and multiple-time European champion, and just one of the clutchest throwers ever. Now you may be asking, why is he underrated? And I think with all the hoopla of discus nowadays, where people are throwing 70 meters at Worlds and whatnot, which is right, because that's insane. That is rightfully deserved. But I just want people to understand a true master and the last great non-reverser, really. And just I respect dominance over a long period of time, consistency. A bad throw for him was like 67 meters. He consistently threw 68 plus when it counted. Always came up clutch in 2009. Won on his last throw with a personal best at 69 meters to beat Malachowski. And he's done it a bunch of times. He did it in the 5th round in 2012 Olympics, throwing like maybe 10 centimeters further than Ishan Adati to take the lead in the 5th round. Just clutch. One of the clutchest throwers ever. You can make an argument he is the clutchest thrower ever, and that's because of his technique. It's super repeatable, just super consistent. And that's also what you get with a non-reverse. If you're good at it, it's a lot more consistent than a reverse. It's one of the upsides, but I say that if you're good at a non-reverse. And if you do a true non-reverse. All right, but let's just watch this throw. All right, so this throw is from 2013 Moscow, as you can probably see from above right here. All right, and this isn't the most technically sound throw he ever had, but it was still, I think, like a 68, 69 meter throw. He already won the comp. I think this is his last throw. So, and beating, in my opinion, some of the toughest comp ever in discus. If you just look at names. Now, a lot of these people were out of their prime, except Malachowski and Gerd Kanter. Alekna was out of his prime, definitely. He was older when Robert Harting started winning and dominating. But Haddadi was in his prime. Malachowski was pretty much in his prime. Gerd Kanter was later in his prime to not being in his prime. And it's sad that Robert Harting later in his career, after 2014, got a whole bunch of knee and shoulder injuries and just was never the same. Because I think he stopped competing in like 2018 or something like that. But before that, before the injuries, before all that, he was just a beast. I think in 2012 Europeans, it was just pouring rain, and he threw like, I think, 67 meters in the pouring rain, which is crazy to do in discus. Not even because the circle's wet, because when you're at this kind of level, that doesn't even matter. And honestly, if you have good technique, you should be able to throw in rain. It's the fact that in discus, it's hard to actually hold. It's also actually hard for the discus to actually stay in your hand because it's wet. So that's the hard part of throwing discus in the rain. I think that's probably the hardest event to throw in the rain is discus. Just for that reason. But let's get into this throw. So let's watch it full speed. As you can see, just super dynamic, super relaxed shoulders through the throw. And just overall, I mean, honestly, this throw is not the most technically perfect throw he's ever had, but he's about as close as you can get to perfect technique, honestly. You know, he is, for someone this height, he's a very, very tall individual. Starts really wide, but that's okay. Normally, you see a lot of non-reversers, like true non-reversers, start really wide, because they want to stay super low throughout the circle. All right, so, and it's also just a personal preference thing. So normally I would say you want your armpit to be, and by the way, sorry for this quality. I don't know why the quality is so bad. But it's not my fault. It's just I put it up to the full quality when I screen recorded this. But normally you want your armpit to be over this left knee, but because he's starting so wide, it doesn't even really matter. He's still getting weight over his left leg. All right, so he still gets a beautiful position here. All right, really holds his right foot on the ground super long. And keeps, I want you to pay attention throughout this entire throw, how far he keeps the discus back. All right, and that's super important for a non-reverser to do. All right, because reversers kind of don't want to keep it this far back because it makes it hard to finish and you have a tendency to pull. Generally, you see reversers keep it a little more in line with their hip. Still back, but not this far back. All right, but right here, very nice. Beautiful. And honestly, this position right here is pretty much Alekna at this point. Vergilius Alekna. So, I mean, if you ever look at him from the back, well, that sounded weird. If you ever look at him from the back of the ring, Vergilius Alekna, then you'll see the similarities. So you throw right here, and people will say, oh, he doesn't have a wide sweep. Well, that's just because he started so wide. So he does have a wide sweep. It just doesn't look like it because, I mean, instead of his foot being here, it's here. So it just, he does have a wide sweep. All right, it just doesn't look like it because he starts so wide in his legs. All right, so that's something you pay attention to, but he still has knees squared. Sorry, what am I even saying? His knees are semi-far apart. You also have to remember when someone's like 6'7" plus, it kind of changes the way you move a little. So normally you want your groin to be facing the sector and to be like kind of feeling like a little soccer kick here. But because he's so tall, it will take forever for his legs to actually get grounded in the middle if he did that. So he kind of goes with his knee. And Valerie Allman kind of does this a little too. And you'll tend to see this with a lot more like really tall people is they'll go knee first, but then they still rotate their right hip. All right, so they're not kicking. All right, so he's still here and he's still rotational. All right, so he kind of turns his groin in a little bit right there, even though it's hard to see because of the quality of this video. All right, so he turns it a little and gets an excellent pre-turn. That's, I think, a must in a true non-reverser. You have to pre-turn because it's predicated on getting your hips into the throw as soon as possible. All right, so you got to pre-turn. And what I mean by that is that normally like people land and their foot's facing this way, but his is facing the back of the ring, and he has this perfect line. This is a stack. This is a beautiful right side stack. Everything is on line. His head, knee, the discus, and his foot are perfectly in line. All right, and I like these wide knees right here. Now this is the part where he normally doesn't land like this. All right, he normally lands in a perfect T. Like, he normally has his left foot down here. All right. But he kind of open. He's kind of a little open here and kind of leaning down. Like, his chest is a little down. So it's not the most ideal thing. But if you notice, his discus is still way far behind him here. And he's super patient. He's realized that he's landed a little off. So he's extra patient at the finish and then just hits it. And you notice here, so his right ankle lands and does not go down or up. It just keeps the same and just keeps rotating. All right, so that's something to keep in mind as well, because you want to keep that right ankle stiff in the middle. All right, and if you watch basically any good thrower, minus Che and Valerie Allman, any good rotational shot putter or a discus thrower, they'll keep that right ankle stiff, all right? And honestly, this kind of reminds me of Joe Kovacs' right ankle in the middle, because normally, like, the heel isn't super, it doesn't have to be that high. But, I mean, him and Kovacs, you know, some of the best throwers ever, and they have it that high, so whatever. So, and then always pushes in the ground, has a flat left foot block, and then just holds this block. And you notice how he kind of leans a little bit this way to get that extra length. And then if you notice also how he's not extending this right knee, he's just rotating, and he actually keeps both knees bent. So his shin is actually facing the ground here, his right shin, and this left knee is bent and blocked. And you want that, because the second you start extending your knees, you're going to want to get off the ground and reverse. So that's when I say, like, a true non-reverser, you can always tell because they'll bend the knee. They'll bend their block leg because that keeps them grounded. All right? So that's something to keep in mind too. I like to teach, so if you're going to be a reverser, when you do non-reverses and stuff in training, that's why I don't really care if you foul out the front and stuff, because you're gonna, if you non-reverse but then don't, and then try not to reverse, if that makes sense. Because if you're a reverser, I don't want you to get in the habit of bending this left knee at the block. I want you to extend it while keeping the right knee stays bent. Maybe not this bent, because it still has to work up a little. But so if you extend the left knee, then you're gonna have a tendency to want to go out the front a little, and that's perfectly fine, as long as, like, when you see here, when his right foot follows through, that it's going forward and it's still staying on the ground, and that's what you really want to look for. All right, so he's here, beautiful, still looking at the disc. Still holding his left side. The disc is out of his hand, like here, I think. Let me see. Yeah, like here, it's out of his hand. And then he just keeps holding that. And boom. All right. The other reason why you want to keep this right knee bent is because it's a lot easier to... the left knee bent is because it's also a lot easier to save the throw. And you notice here, now normally you drag the outside of the foot, so this part... But because he landed a little off, he drags this part of the foot. But you want to drag the right foot after the release, because that slows your momentum down and helps you stay in the ring as well. So that's something to keep in mind if you're non-reversing and you have a trouble fouling. It's probably because you're picking up the right foot instead of dragging it on the ground. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, but... just overall, just a fantastic throw. Highly recommend watching him in 2009 World Champs in Berlin, which I think is probably the best technical throw he's ever done. And honestly, one of the best throws ever in terms of just watching it. It's just, there's just something different about just watching an elite non-reverser throw. It's just something different. I don't know. And, Germans, they just always have the best technique. So if you're looking for technical models, just watch Germans, because they have the best technique. Let's be real here. And they all consistently produce the best discus throwers throughout history. So, but yeah, overall, just so nice. And a testament to patience at the finish. Because normally people would rip out of this. But because he's so experienced, he knows he landed off. All right? He landed off here. So he's still being a little patient. Just waits just a little bit. So he can still finish through and get all that energy into it. All right, so let's watch that full speed. Oops. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, if you're 6'7" plus, I think he's a very good technical model. And even if you're not 6'7" plus, he's still a good technical model because he just does all the basic stuff right. And I keep saying that the best throwers in the world, the reason why is because they've mastered how to do the basic things right, the basic drills. So when your coach tells you, oh, we're going to do 180s and like a bunch of med ball drills and we're not going to touch an implement for like 2 months, there's a reason why. It's because the fundamentals are so important. All right? There's a reason why Ryan Krauser is so good and Joe Kovacs and Tom Walsh and Robert Harting and Gerd Kanter and all the greats. All right? Because they have all the fundamentals down. They can do them in their sleep, all right? So that's something to keep in mind. And that's the way to build consistency too. Is to do all the basic basic movements correct and consistently, and then you can add your own little flair and kind of individualize your technique. But you got to master the basics first. All right? So keep that in mind, but overall it doesn't get much better than this. And, he is a 70-meter thrower. I think he's thrown around over 70, I think, twice or 3 times. I forget. Which is far as hell. Far as hell for a non-reverser. Because the reverse, it does go far. Even Jürgen Schultz, who's known as a non-reverser, when he broke the world record, he reversed. All right? And then the German government told him basically, oh, you're too inconsistent with the reverse, so just go to the non-reverse. And then he really never threw 70 ever again. But this isn't a video about him. But overall, just a fantastic thrower. I'll link his personal best, height, weight, and notable accomplishments in the video description. And I hope you guys have a good day and learn something. And I'll see you in the next one.